My son, not knowing my salary had just shot up to $75,000 a month, yelled, "Get out, you broke loser," and threw scalding coffee on me. I walked away quietly. The next day, his face went white when I pulled up in a brand new luxury sports car and I was 68 years old, a widow, and utterly broken. My own son, the boy I raised, had just thrown scalding hot tea in my face, called me a beggar, and screamed for me to get out of his house. But that day, as the burning humiliation mixed with physical pain, something shifted inside me. Something snapped. You see, I never imagined my twilight years would look like this. While my friends were doting on grandkids and traveling the world, I was trembling in my eldest son's guest room, flinching at every creak on the stairs. My name is Gwendolyn Taft. My whole life, I was an accountant for Pierce Construction in San Antonio. Not glamorous, but stable. And after my husband, Lester, died so suddenly when our kids were just 8, 12, and 14, stability became my lifeline. I remember that day like it was yesterday. Lester came home, complaining of heartburn. He took a pill, sat down to watch TV, and 20 minutes later, I heard a terrible sound. He just slumped. The ambulance came, but it was too late. Just like that, I was alone, a young widow with 3 children and a mortgage. Raymond Pierce, my boss, became my salvation. He was an incredibly understanding man, letting me work from home when a child was sick, never questioning in advance for unexpected expenses. I worked for him for 34 years, right up until I retired 3 years ago. My children grew up so differently. My middle daughter, Sybil, she's the sensitive one. An elementary school teacher, married to a programmer, Dominic, with 2 beautiful kids, Oliver and June. They live in Portland, call me regularly, and always send the sweetest homemade cards from the grandkids at Christmas. Then there's Frank, my youngest. He inherited Lester's passion for electronics, became an engineer in Chicago. He doesn't call as often, but every month, a small amount of money quietly appears in my account, even though I've told him countless times I can manage. He divorced his wife, Paula, last year. No kids. He sounds a little lost sometimes, but he swears he's getting used to bachelor life. But Harlan, my eldest, he was always a difficult child. Impulsive. Stubborn. A liar about the little things. Lester was better at handling his temper, but after he died, I didn't always have the strength or the patience. Maybe I made mistakes raising him. Or maybe he was just always going to be this way. Harlan works as an insurance appraiser and married Daisy when he was 26. She's one of those women with grand pretensions, even though she's just an administrator at a fitness club. They have 2 kids, Elliot, who's now 15, and Nora, 13. My decision to move in with them wasn't spontaneous. After retirement, I stayed in my small house, finally paid off the year before I stopped working. My pension was modest, enough for basic needs, and I'd pick up accounting consulting gigs for extra cash. But last fall, a flood ruined my basement and first floor. Insurance barely covered part of the repairs. I drained almost all my savings, and what was left was barely enough for utilities. I was actually trying to figure out how much I could get for my grandmother's silver when Harlan called. "Mom, how would you feel about moving in with us?" His voice had this uncharacteristic concern. "The kids miss their grandmother and Daisy, and I would feel better if you were around. We could even rent out your house for some extra income." I didn't agree right away. My relationship with Harlan had always been strained, and Daisy and we barely spoke at family gatherings. But Harlan kept insisting, and eventually I gave in. I sold most of my furniture, rented my house out for just enough to cover taxes and insurance, and moved into my son's house with just 2 suitcases. The first few days were better than I'd expected. Daisy was unusually friendly, showed me the guest room on the first floor, gave me my own bathroom, a spot in the fridge. My grandchildren, whom I usually saw maybe once a year, were wary but polite. "We're so glad you're here with us, Mom," Harlan said, putting his arm around my shoulders. "Don't worry about a thing. Just live and enjoy yourself." On the evening of the 3rd day, we were in the backyard. Daisy was barbecuing, the kids were playing badminton, and Harlan and I were sipping lemonade. By the way, Mom, Harlan said casually, Daisy and I work a lot, and the kids are teenagers now. They need supervision. Would you mind picking them up from school and making dinner sometimes? Just a couple of times a week, when Daisy and I have late shifts. Of course, I agreed. I was living there for free after all. Helping with the grandkids was the least I could do. But a couple of times a week quickly became a daily chore. Daisy started staying late at work, then signed up for manicure and pedicure classes. I need to develop professionally, Gwen, she'd say. Then came the yoga classes for mental balance. By the end of the first month, I was cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner, doing laundry, ironing, cleaning the house, picking up the kids, helping with homework, and driving them to extracurriculars. All while my opinion was never taken into account, and any initiative on my part was met with irritation. One day, I made a casserole from my mother's recipe. What is this disgusting stuff? Daisy grimaced, barely glancing at the dish. You know I don't eat gluten. But there's no gluten, I stammered. Just vegetables, a little cheese. I said I don't eat it, she snapped, turning to the children. Shall we order pizza? They nodded happily. Harlan didn't even look up from his phone. Another time, I bought Elliot a new shirt. There was a school holiday coming up, and all his looked worn. What are you doing? Harlan snapped when Elliot showed off his new shirt. Are you trying to show that we can't provide for our own son? Give that rag back and stay out of our business. I just wanted to help, I tried to explain. And it's not cheap junk. It's good quality, who cares? Harlan threw the shirt on the floor. We don't need your charity. He didn't speak to me for a week after that, and Daisy took every opportunity to make snide remarks about certain pensioners who stick their noses in other people's business. The worst part? My grandchildren quickly adopted their parents' attitude. At first, they at least said hello. But now they pretended I didn't exist. Elliot, when he thought I couldn't hear, called me an old hag. And Nora wrinkled her nose and said I smelled old. I tried to talk to Harlan, but he just dismissed me. Stop being so dramatic, Mom. You live in our house for free, so be thankful. My only outlets were the occasional phone calls from Sybil and Frank. Sybil always started by asking how I was feeling, listening carefully to my cautious answers. I didn't complain. I didn't want to ruin the relationship between my siblings. But I think she sensed something wasn't right. Mom, you don't have to live with Harlan, she'd say. Dominic and I would love to have you move in with us. Portland is too damp for my joints, dear, I joke, and besides, you have enough on your plate with the children. Frank was less perceptive, but in every conversation, he'd offer financial help. Mom, I can send you more money. Just tell me how much you need. I have everything I need, son, I'd reply. You'd better buy yourself something nice. In contrast to these warm conversations, life at Harlan's house felt even more depressing. I was an unwelcome guest, tolerated solely for the benefits I provided. Daisy openly discussed with her friends on the phone how lucky she was to have a free housekeeper and babysitter. While Harlan, if I dared ask for the slightest help, like a ride to the clinic, would sigh and roll his eyes. Don't I have anything else to do? Call a taxi. Midway subscribe line. By the way, if you're still with me and this story has you hooked, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. More unbelievable stories and life lessons are coming your way, and your support means the world to me. Main story continued. By the end of the third month, I was seriously considering moving back into my own home, even if it meant debt to break the lease. But then, a phone call came that changed everything. It was Tuesday around 5 p.m. Daisy wasn't home, the kids were at practice, and Harlan wasn't due until 8. I was cooking dinner when my old phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I was about to hang up. Scammers harass me regularly, but something made me answer. Gwendolyn, this is Raymond Pierce. I don't know if you remember your old boss. Raymond's voice sounded weaker, but it was definitely him, with that characteristic hoarseness and slight Texas accent. Of course I do, Mr. Pierce, I replied, surprised. How are you? Been better, Gwendolyn. Been better. He sighed heavily. Listen, we need to talk. It's important, not something we can discuss over the phone. Can you come into the office tomorrow at 10 a.m.? I hesitated. Tomorrow was Wednesday. I had to pick up Nora from school at 2 and take her to piano. This is really important, Gwendolyn. His voice was almost pleading. I wouldn't bother you if there was anyone else I could ask. All right, Mr. Pierce, I decided. I'll be at your office at 10 tomorrow. Thank you, Gwendolyn. And be prepared for a serious conversation. He hung up, leaving me completely baffled. We hadn't spoken since I retired. What could be so urgent? And why did his voice sound so doomed? The next morning was cool, even for late April. I woke at 5 a.m., long before anyone else, to make breakfast and get ready. Thoughts of that conversation had kept me awake most of the night. Pierce Construction was in the same building, but inside, everything was different. Glass partitions, trendy coffee machines, young employees glued to tablets. The reception desk was now a girl with bright red hair and piercings, the opposite of the stern Mrs. Becker from my day. Appointment with Mr. Pierce, Gwendolyn Taft, I said. She looked me over, clearly surprised. 4th floor, down the hall, last door. As the elevator ascended, I nervously tugged at my old tweed jacket. It still looked decent. I'd always taken care of my clothes. Raymond's office had changed too. Larger, modern furniture, huge windows overlooking San Antonio. But Raymond himself, sitting at his massive desk, looked much worse. Gaunt, completely gray, deep shadows under his eyes. When he stood to greet me, I noticed a slight limp. Gwendolyn, he exclaimed, with a warmth I hadn't expected. How wonderful to see you. Please have a seat. He pointed, then came around the desk to sit beside me, dropping all pretense of a boss employee distance. You haven't changed a bit, he smiled. But you, I began, then stopped myself, not wanting to be tactless. I look terrible. I know. He waved a dismissive hand. Pancreatic cancer. Late stage. Doctors give me 3 to 6 months. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Raymond had always been vitality personified. Energetic, active, tireless. Seeing him so weakened was painful. I'm so sorry, I murmured. Don't be, he smiled weakly. I've had a good life, Gwendolyn. Built a successful business, raised a daughter, even played with my grandkids. But that's not the point. He paused, gathering strength. I invited you here because the company is in danger. After my diagnosis, I started preparing to sell, to protect the employees and get a good deal for my family. But my CFO, Vernon Gray, do you remember him? I nodded. Vernon had joined a couple of years before I retired, a slick young Wall Street guy Raymond hired to modernize finance. He's cooking the books, Raymond continued, his voice lowering. Hiding assets, underreporting profits, creating fictitious debts. He's laying the groundwork to buy the company for a song after I die. I have proof, but I need someone who understands all his schemes and can fix this before the sale. Someone I can trust. And you thought of me? I asked, astonished. But I've been retired 3 years. Everything's changed. New programs. Raymond covered my hand with his, dry and hot. You're the best accountant I've ever worked with. You have a sharp mind and tremendous integrity. I trust you more than anyone else in this company. So listen. He squeezed my hand tighter. I'm offering you the position of Chief Financial Officer. Full access to all documents, signing authority, and a salary of $75,000 a month. I gasped. The amount was astronomical. Tens of times more than I'd ever earned. That's impossible, I breathed. You could hire anyone on Wall Street for that kind of money. That's where Vernon came from, Raymond said with a bitter smile. No, I need someone I can trust, someone who knows the company from the inside and won't sell it out for their own gain. He handed me a folder. Here's a 6-month contract. That should be enough time to get everything in order and prepare the company for an honest sale. Take a look. Think about it, but don't drag your feet. Time is against us. I took the folder with trembling hands. The offer felt unreal, like something out of a movie. $75,000 a month? Even for 6 months, that was more than I'd earned in the last 10 years of my career combined. What about Vernon? I asked. He'll just give up his position. Raymond allowed himself a faint smile. I fired him this morning. Security is already packing his things. He'll threaten to sue, of course, but I have enough evidence of his shenanigans that he'll prefer to leave quietly. I need to think about it, I said, still not quite believing what was happening. Of course, Raymond nodded. But I hope you'll agree. You're the only one who can save what I've built my whole life. I returned home in a state of complete confusion. The folder with the contract burned in my hands, 1,000 thoughts swirling in my head. On one hand, this was a chance not only for financial independence, but to help a man who had always been good to me. On the other, I wasn't sure that at my age, I could handle such a colossal responsibility. I stopped in front of Harlan's house, taking a deep breath. I had to come up with an explanation for my absence. Nora had probably already complained that her grandmother hadn't picked her up. I was right. The moment I stepped inside, Daisy confronted me red-faced. "Where have you been?" she snapped. "Nora had to take the bus. She missed her piano lesson." "I had to go to the clinic," I lied, deciding not to mention Raymond's offer. A spot suddenly opened up with a cardiologist, and I'd been waiting 2 months for this appointment. "And you couldn't have warned me?" Daisy crossed her arms. "I missed an important meeting with a client because of you. I had to ask for time off to pick up Nora. I tried to call you, but my phone died." I continued to fabricate. "I'm sorry, Daisy. It won't happen again." "Like hell it won't," she snorted. "Harlan's going to be furious." And he was. That evening, I endured a long, angry tirade from my son. "We took you in, gave you a roof over your head, and what do? He shouted, spittle flying. "You let us down at the first opportunity." "Harlan," I explained, "I don't care about your explanations." He slammed his fist on the table. "Either you do your job or pack your things and go back to your hole." I lowered my head silently. Arguing with Harlan was useless, especially in this mood. Besides, my mind was consumed with something else entirely, the contract still in my bag. That night, when the house was quiet, I took out the documents and studied them carefully. The terms were beyond generous. In addition to the fabulous salary, Raymond offered premium health insurance, a company car, and a bonus upon successful sale. The contract was well written, no hidden clauses, even compensation for early termination. I spent a sleepless night weighing the pros and cons. By morning, my decision was made. I would accept Raymond's offer. It was a chance to help him, yes, but also an opportunity to regain control of my own life. I called him first thing, as soon as Harlan and Daisy left for work and the kids went to school. "I accept," I said, without preamble. "Great." Raymond's voice sounded relieved. "When can you start?" "Tomorrow." "I'll see you at the office at 9 a.m., Raymond. Gwendolyn." "Thank you." After hanging up, I thought about my new life. The first thing, tell my family? After yesterday's scene, I was inclined to keep it a secret, at least for now. Knowing Harlan and Daisy, they'd immediately demand money for repairs, a new car, private school. No. I needed to get on my feet first, save up, find my own place. Then decide. As a cover story, I invented volunteering at the local library, sorting books, helping visitors. It would explain my absence on weekdays and sound plausible for someone my age. That evening, I casually mentioned my volunteering over dinner. "The library?" Harlan asked, mouth full. "Why do you do that?" "So I don't sit at home all day," I shrugged. "I need something to do, to be around people." "Who's going to pick up the kids from school?" Daisy immediately chimed in. "And cook dinner?" "I've arranged to work part-time," I lied. "I'll be done by 2, so I'll have time." Harlan and Daisy exchanged glances, clearly dissatisfied, but they couldn't argue directly. It was unpaid, after all. They couldn't accuse me of ulterior motives. "Just don't let it interfere with your duties here," Harlan warned. "We didn't take you in so you could entertain yourself with books." "Of course, dear," I replied meekly, suppressing the urge to tell him the truth about how much I'd now be earning. The next day, I started at Pierce Construction. The first few weeks were incredibly difficult. I had to learn new programs, decipher Vernon's convoluted diagrams, and build relationships with coworkers who looked at me with poorly concealed skepticism. But gradually, things fell into place. My many years at the company proved invaluable. I knew all the ins and outs, remembered the history of projects, and quickly re-established old connections. Accounting was always my strong suit, and Vernon's schemes, though clever, were unraveling. Raymond, despite his declining health, came in every other day, spent long hours with me, bringing me up to speed and supporting my decisions before the board. You're doing even better than I expected, he told me after a particularly successful meeting where we presented a debt restructuring plan. I knew I was right about you, Gwendolyn. His words meant more than all the money in the world. For the first time in a long time, I felt needed, competent, respected. It was an intoxicating feeling, especially compared to how I was treated at home. At home, the situation only worsened. Daisy, unhappy that I now had to divide my time between volunteering and household chores, became even more nitpicky and sarcastic. You've oversalted the soup again, she grimaced at dinner. And the laundry isn't ironed properly. Maybe you should spend less time on your books and more time taking care of the family that took you in. Harlan supported her, adding his own complaints. Mom, you've been kind of distracted lately. Yesterday, you forgot my favorite cheese. Today, you didn't write down a message from my boss. It's all because of your stupid library. Maybe you should stop playing charity. But the grandchildren were the worst. Now that Elliot and Nora realized their parents wouldn't reprimand them, they stopped even pretending to be polite. Once, I caught Nora rummaging through my bag. What are you doing? I asked, trying to hide my alarm. There was a pay slip in there. Looking for money, she replied cheekily. I need a new phone case. Nora, you can't take other people's things without asking, I said, carefully taking the bag from her. If you need money, ask your parents. What could I possibly take from you? The girl snorted. You have nothing. You're a bum. I froze, shocked by such blunt rudeness. Before I could respond, Daisy entered. What's going on here? She asked, looking from her daughter to me. Grandma won't give me money for a cover, Nora complained immediately. And she hides her stupid bag from us. She was rummaging through my things. I tried to explain. What secrets could you possibly have? Daisy interrupted. You live in our house. You eat our food. If my daughter asks you for something, you have to help her, no buts. Daisy cut me off. Give her the money for the cover since she's asking. I don't think you have anything more important to spend it on. I silently took out my wallet and handed Nora $20, money I'd been saving for new tights. The girl snatched the bill with a triumphant grin and ran out. And remember, Daisy poked me with her finger. No secrets in my house. Got it. After she left, I sat on the bed, trying to stop my hands from shaking. I needed a more secure place for my work documents. Another time, Elliot accidentally spilled orange juice on my favorite blouse, which I just had dry cleaned for an important investor meeting. Oh, I'm sorry, he said with feigned remorse. I didn't notice. It's okay, I sighed, knowing it wasn't an accident. The boy looked far too pleased with himself. Come on, Mom, Harlan interjected as I started washing the stain. It's just an old rag. You can buy yourself a new one someday. They laughed, father and son, exchanging knowing glances. I said nothing, but inside, I felt a knot of hurt and burning anger. That night, lying in bed, I finally allowed myself to truly think about how my life would change with my new salary. I could rent a beautiful apartment, buy a car, travel. I could help Sybil and Frank spoil their children. I could cut off all contact with Harlan and his family if I wanted to. It was an intoxicating, dizzying freedom. I fell asleep with a smile, imagining Harlan's face when he found out the truth. But in the morning, common sense prevailed. I had to proceed cautiously. First, save enough money, find a place, perhaps consult a lawyer about my will. I didn't want Harlan to get a penny. In the meantime, I had to endure the daily humiliation and pretend everything was fine. Every morning, I went to the library, worked myself to exhaustion at the office, then returned home to cook, clean, and listen to complaints and ridicule. Sometimes, it felt like I was living a double life, successful financial director by day, powerless servant by night. It was exhausting, but the thought that things would soon change gave me strength. Hang in there, Gwendolyn, Raymond encouraged me, noticing the circles under my eyes. You're doing an incredible job. Just a little more, and we'll get the company out of this crisis. I smiled gratefully, not telling him about my domestic problems. He had enough worries. Raymond's health was deteriorating daily. At times, it seemed he was holding on only by sheer force of will and the desire to see his business saved. At home, new trials awaited. Daisy suddenly decided I should also clean the garage and backyard. You sit in your library all day, she said. Consider it compensation for your absence. But I already do all the housework, I tried to argue. And the library is work, too, even if it's unpaid. Who needs your fussing with books? Daisy snapped. You live here for free, so be nice and work for it. I gritted my teeth and said nothing. My workdays blurred into an endless marathon. I woke at 5 a.m., made breakfast, packed lunches, then slipped out while everyone still slept. On my way to the office, I'd stop at a cafe for a coffee, a small luxury I could now afford. By 8:30, I was at my desk, poring over financial reports. The work was harder than I'd expected. Vernon had left a real mess of fake documents, hidden accounts, and confusing transactions. But methodically, step by step, I untangled the knot. Gwendolyn, you're a miracle, Raymond said, reviewing my reports. You've done more in 3 weeks than Vernon did in 3 years. I just know the company, I shrugged, beaming internally with pride. By early June, we had uncovered and corrected most of Vernon's schemes, restored relations with key suppliers, and recovered assets he'd tried to siphon off. More work lay ahead, but the hardest part was behind us. With my first paycheck, I allowed myself small pleasures. A new phone, replacing my ancient flip phone. Nice cosmetics. A salon visit for a modern haircut and color to cover the gray. The rest went into a separate account, saving for my own place. These small changes didn't escape Daisy's watchful eye. Did you get your hair done? She asked one evening, squinting. And is that a new phone? Yes, I said, trying to sound casual. There was a volunteer event at the library, free haircuts from hairdressing college students. And Sybil gave me the phone for my birthday. Your birthday's in November, Daisy remarked dryly. It's a belated gift, I quickly replied. She was saving up for it. Daisy clearly didn't believe me, but she didn't pursue it. She was more interested in whether I'd made the lasagna she'd asked for dinner. At the office, I felt completely different. I was a respected professional, my opinion valued, my decisions carrying weight. Young employees, initially skeptical, now came to me for advice. Even the board members, who'd opposed my appointment, recognized my competence. Mrs. Taft, you've done an amazing job restructuring the debt with Gardner Investments. Alastair Montgomery, the most conservative and nitpicky director, told me one day. I think we all underestimated you. I nodded, accepting the compliment, smiling inwardly, imagining Harlan's reaction if he heard his mother spoken of with such respect. At home, tension mounted. Harlan and Daisy seemed determined to squeeze every last drop out of me. My duties now included laundry, ironing, gardening, walking the dog, and helping Elliot with his math homework. Mom, you're an accountant, Harlan would say, ignoring my protest that I was tired after a long day at the library. Explain these fractions to him. I don't have time. And I do. I finally snapped. Harlan stared at me as if I'd spoken a foreign language. Of course, you have time, he said slowly. What else do you do? Your volunteer work is just a hobby that we graciously allow you to do. I'm a person, too, I said quietly. I have my own things to do and needs to fulfill. What other needs? He snorted. You have a roof over your head and food to eat. What more do you want? Instead of complaining, you should be grateful that we took you in. There was such sincere conviction in his voice that I realized arguing was useless. He truly believed he was doing me a huge favor. I said nothing, swallowing my resentment, and went to help Elliot with his math. The boy greeted me with undisguised contempt. Don't think I'm going to listen to some old woman. Just do my homework for me. I took a deep breath, reminding myself, soon. Just a little longer. Raymond noticed my state. One day, after a meeting, he kept me in his office. Is something wrong, Gwendolyn? He asked with genuine concern. You look exhausted. I wanted to brush it off, say everything was fine. But suddenly, I couldn't keep it inside anymore. I told him everything. About Harlan, Daisy, the constant humiliation, the impossible double life. Raymond listened, attentively, without interrupting. When I finished, he shook his head. Gwendolyn, why do you put up with this? You now have the means to live on your own. I'm saving up for a place, I explained. I want a nest egg before I take the plunge. That's wise, he nodded. But don't forget that life is too short to waste on those who don't appreciate you. His words struck a chord, especially given his own situation. Raymond was fading before my eyes. Every day could be his last, yet he came to the office solving problems, making plans for a future he'd never see. You're right to want to be financially independent, he continued. But don't let them break your spirit. You're a wonderful woman, Gwendolyn, and you deserve respect. After that conversation, something changed in me. I still did my chores, but I no longer tried to please Harlan and Daisy. If they asked for something clearly excessive, I calmly refused. If the children were rude, I didn't swallow my resentment. I firmly told them such behavior was unacceptable. Of course, this didn't go unnoticed. Daisy complained to Harlan that I had completely let myself go. He, in turn, reprimanded me, to which I responded politely, but without my former submissiveness. "What's going on with you, Mom?" he asked once when I refused to sew all his shirts in one evening. "You've become different." "I'm just a human being, Harlan," I replied. "And I have my limits. Are we asking too much of you?" He looked genuinely offended. "After everything we've done for you, what exactly have you done for me?" I asked quietly. "What do you mean, what have we done for you?" He looked genuinely surprised. "We gave you a roof over your head, food, a family. Without us, you'd be living alone in your ramshackle shack with no one to care about you." In his eyes, I saw absolute conviction. For Harlan, this wasn't manipulation. It was a statement of fact. He truly believed he was doing me a great favor. For the first time, I realized how deep the chasm between us was. My own son didn't see me as a person, but as a function, a tool for his convenience. No words I could say would change that perception. From that moment on, I began counting the days until I could leave. Every morning, as I left for work, I mentally noted another day gone. Every evening, returning to Harlan's house, I told myself, this is temporary. My inner alienation must have been obvious, because the attitude at home grew worse. Daisy stopped even pretending to be polite. Elliot and Nora openly ignored my requests. Harlan spoke to me in an increasingly irritated tone, as if I were a disobedient child. In mid-July, when my bank account held enough for the first month's rent, something happened that finally decided everything. It was Saturday, a day off. For the first time in ages, I had a free day. The office had a cleaning day, and I'd told my family I was doing inventory at the library. I planned to look at apartment listings. But Harlan and Daisy had other plans. "Mom, Daisy and I want to go see this new movie," my son announced at breakfast. "Will you watch the kids?" "I have some things planned for today," I replied cautiously. "What things?" Daisy didn't even look up from her phone. "You have the day off. You could spend it doing something useful, spending time with your grandchildren." "I have a doctor's appointment," I lied, knowing they wouldn't believe me anyway. "The orthopedist for my arthritis." "I've been waiting 2 months. Reschedule it." Harlan shrugged. "It's not that urgent." "I can't reschedule," I tried to say firmly but calmly. "The doctor is very busy. The next appointment won't be until September." "So what?" Daisy interjected. "You can wait until September. You won't fall apart. We want to go to the movies." My knees hurt already. I decided to stand my ground. "I need to see the doctor." "God, Mom." Harlan rolled his eyes. "Always your health problems. Why can't you just help your family when they ask you to? I help you every day." My patience was wearing thin. "I cook, clean, pick up the kids, help with homework. Can I have one day to myself?" "To yourself?" Harlan asked, sounding as surprised as if I'd said something absurd. "What would you do to yourself? You're retired. You don't have a job, hobbies, or friends. Your life is us, your family." "I have my own life," I said quietly but firmly. "And my own needs." "What needs does an old woman have?" Daisy snorted, not looking up from her phone. "The main need at your age is to be useful to your family, not a burden." I looked at her, then at Harlan, who was nodding in agreement. The conversation was pointless. They genuinely didn't see me as a person with my own desires and rights. "I'm sorry, but I can't babysit tonight," I said, getting up from the table. "I have to go to the doctor." "Didn't you hear what we said?" Harlan's voice rose. You're not going anywhere. You're staying with the kids. No, I said firmly, for the very first time. I'm not staying. Harlan's face turned red with anger. He jumped from his chair, looming over me. What do you mean no? You live in my house. You eat my food. And you'll do what I tell you. I'm your mother, not your servant. I tried to speak calmly, though I was trembling inside. And I have a right to my own time. What right? Harlan roared. You live here out of the goodness of our hearts. Out of the goodness of our hearts, do you understand? If it weren't for us, you'd be living in your hole, counting pennies until you retired. His words hurt more than I expected. Not because they were true, I knew I could now afford a much better life than Harlan's, but because they reflected his attitude toward me. Contempt, superiority, a complete lack of respect. I'm leaving, I said, feeling strangely calm. I'm going to see the doctor now, and we'll talk tonight when you've calmed down. I turned to leave the kitchen, but Harlan grabbed my arm, squeezing my wrist painfully. You're not going anywhere. I told you, you're staying with the kids. Let go. I tried to free myself. You're hurting me. Hurting you. He laughed maliciously. You don't know what hurting is yet, you ungrateful old hag. We took you in, gave you a home, and instead of gratitude, you throw a scene. Daisy didn't even look up from her phone, as if nothing unusual was happening. Let me go, Harlan, I repeated right now. Or what? He squeezed my hand even tighter. What are you going to do, you beggar? Where will you go without us? Who needs you? Something broke inside me at that moment. Years of hurt, humiliation, and rejection poured out. I pulled my hand away and, to my own surprise, shouted, I need myself. I'm a human being, not a thing. I'm your mother who raised you alone after your father died, who worked 2 jobs so you could go to college, and this is how you thank me. By treating me like a servant? By humiliating me in front of my own grandchildren. My screams seemed to stun everyone. Daisy even looked up from her phone. The children froze, mouths open. But Harlan quickly regained his composure. How dare you raise your voice to me in my own house, he hissed, grabbing his mug of hot tea from the table. You. He didn't finish his sentence. Instead, he threw the hot tea in my face. The scalding liquid ran down my cheeks, neck, and chest, soaking my blouse. I screamed in pain and surprise. Get out, you beggar! Harlan yelled, pushing me toward the door. Get out of my house. You're no longer part of this family. You're nobody. Do you hear me? Nobody. Shocked, my face and clothes wet with tea, I backed toward the door. Harlan's eyes burned with a fury I had never seen before. Behind him stood Daisy and the children, unperturbed, indifferent, as if what was happening was a normal family argument and not the expulsion of an elderly woman from her home. Pack your things and get out. Harlan continued to shout. I'll give you 10 minutes, then I'll throw everything out onto the street. I turned silently and went to my room. My hands were shaking. My face was burning from the tea and the humiliation. But inside, I felt a strange emptiness. It was as if something important, something that connected me to this house, to these people, had finally been severed. I quickly gathered the essentials into a small bag, my documents, my phone, a few changes of clothes. The rest could be picked up later, or I could buy new things. Right now, the main thing was to get out of this house where I had been humiliated for so long. Passing the kitchen, I heard Daisy say, maybe you shouldn't have been so harsh. She is your mother, after all. I don't care. Harlan snapped. She crossed the line. Let her get out and live her own life. We'll see how she manages without us. I quietly opened the front door and stepped outside. It was a sunny morning. Neighbors were busy in their gardens, someone walking their dog. A typical summer day in the suburbs of San Antonio. I walked slowly down the sidewalk without looking back. My face still burned from the tea, my blouse clung uncomfortably, but strangely, I felt lighter than I had in months. As if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Where to now? I thought, stopping at the corner. I had a decent amount of money in my account, but no place to stay. I could call Sybil or Frank, but I didn't want to involve them in this mess. I took out my phone and called a taxi to the nearest hotel. After all, I could afford it now. And then there would be a new life. One with no place for those who didn't know how to appreciate and respect others. Sitting on a bench waiting for the taxi, I suddenly caught myself smiling. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. The Riverview Hotel turned out to be a lifesaver. The spacious room, air conditioning, a soft bed, a large bathroom. It seemed like a palace after Harlan's cramped guest bedroom. The first thing I did was take a long, hot shower, washing away not only the sticky tea, but all the negativity of my past life. Red burn marks remained, but fortunately, they weren't serious. The hotel manager, noticing my condition, offered a first aid kit. I carefully applied healing ointment. When I was done, I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed myself to comprehend what had happened. My own son had kicked me out, poured hot tea on me, called me a beggar, and thrown me out like trash. All in front of his wife and children, who did nothing. Strangely, instead of despair, I felt only emptiness and a slight bitterness. The last thread connecting me to Harlan had snapped, freeing me from any illusions. I took out my phone and, after a moment's hesitation, dialed Raymond's number. Despite it being his day off, he answered almost immediately. "Gwendolyn, is something wrong?" His voice was concerned, and it touched me unexpectedly. Holding back tears, I briefly told him what had happened. "My God," Raymond exhaled. "That's terrible. Are you okay? Do you need medical attention?" "No, just minor burns," I replied. "I'm at the Riverview Hotel. They have everything here." "Stay there," he said firmly. "I'll call my friend at the real estate agency. We'll find you a decent place to live, not just a temporary shelter." Talking to Raymond, I felt a little better. At least I had a job, money, and the prospect of a home. Not bad for a woman my age who had just been kicked out by her son. My next call was to Sybil. I didn't want to disturb her, but I felt I had to tell at least one of my children before Harlan gave his version. "Mom?" Sybil answered, surprised. "You rarely call on Saturdays." "I'm not living with Harlan anymore," I said, deciding not to beat around the bush. "What? Why? What happened?" I told her everything, trying to be objective, though some details, like the hot tea, still drew gasps of outrage from her. "Oh my God, Mom, that's awful," she exclaimed. "Do you want Dominic and me to come over? Or you can fly out to Portland." "No, honey," I replied gently. "I'll be fine. I have a job and money for housing." "A job?" Sybil asked. "You mean volunteering at the library? But does that pay?" Then I decided it was time for the truth. At least to Sybil, the most sensitive of my children. "Actually, I don't work at the library," I confessed. "I'm the chief financial officer at Pierce Construction. I make $75,000 a month." There was silence. Then Sybil burst out laughing. "Mom, you're joking, right? $75,000 a month? That's insane." "It's true," I said calmly. "Raymond Pierce, my former boss, offered me the job 2 months ago. I kept it a secret from Harlan and his family because, well, you know why. We talked for almost an hour. Sybil bombarded me with questions, plans for the future, and offered to help again. I assured her I could manage, but promised to keep her posted. After Sybil, I called Frank. My younger son's reaction was more subdued. He'd never been emotional, but I sensed his genuine outrage at Harlan's behavior and his relief that I was okay. I was woken the next morning by a call from Raymond. "Gwendolyn, my friend Marcus at the real estate agency has found something special for you. It's an apartment in River Heights, a new gated community with a pool and spa. 2 bedrooms, a view of the river. If you're interested, he can show it to you today." I agreed, though I doubted such an apartment was within my budget. River Heights was one of San Antonio's most prestigious complexes. Marcus, an energetic man in his 50s, met me at the entrance. The grounds were impressive, manicured lawns, fountains, winding paths among flowering shrubs. The apartment itself was stunning. A spacious living room with panoramic windows overlooking the river, a modern kitchen, 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, even a small study. Marcus named the price, and I was surprised. It was well within my means with my new salary. "The owner is going abroad for 3 years, Marcus explained. Wants a reliable tenant. I told him about you, the CFO of a reputable company, recommended by Raymond Pierce himself. He agreed to a long-term lease with a fixed rate and the right of first refusal. The next day, I signed the lease, and by evening, I'd moved my few belongings from the hotel. The empty rooms looked uncomfortable, but that was temporary. Now, I had the means to furnish it to my liking. On Monday, I returned to work with renewed energy. My colleagues noticed the change. I looked more energetic, more focused, despite the turbulent weekend. Over the next 2 weeks, I immersed myself in setting up my new life. By day, I worked at the office, preparing the company for sale. In the evenings, I worked on the apartment, buying furniture, dishes, textiles, gradually turning the empty space into a real home. I allowed myself little luxuries, a designer sofa, a bed with an orthopedic mattress I dreamed of, a dining set of natural wood. Each new item seemed to reinforce my new identity, a successful, independent woman who could afford to live the way she wanted. One evening, as Raymond and I stayed late discussing upcoming negotiations, he asked, "How do you get to work, Gwendolyn?" "By taxi," I replied. "It's convenient from River Heights." "Not far." "Why don't you buy a car?" Raymond suggested. "Your contract includes a company car, but you haven't used it yet." I thought about it. There was a clause, but with moving and settling in, I simply hadn't had time. "I haven't driven in years," I admitted. "After Lester died, we only had one car, and Harlan took it when he left for college. After that, I just got used to public transportation." "But you know how to drive?" Raymond asked. "Of course, I just haven't practiced in a while." "Then it's settled." He smiled, his determined smile. "Tomorrow, we're going to pick out a car for you. And not just any boring little runabout, but something befitting your new status." The next day, despite his failing health, Raymond personally drove me to a car dealership. Not just any dealership, a Jaguar dealership, one of the most prestigious in the city. "Raymond, this is too much," I protested when I realized where we were. "I don't need such an expensive car." "Gwendolyn," he said seriously, turning to me. "I won't be around much longer. I want to do something good for people who deserve it. Let me do this." The sales manager, who recognized Raymond, greeted us like royalty and led us into the showroom where gleaming cars, each worth more than I'd earned in my entire life, stood under spotlights. "You need something elegant but with character," said the manager, looking me up and down. "Let me suggest the F-Type. Our sports convertible. Amazing handling, acceleration from 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, and absolute comfort." He led us to a gleaming dark blue car with a cream leather interior. It was a work of art. Sweeping lines, predatory headlights, elegant curves. The manager arranged a test drive. 20 minutes later, we were leaving the showroom in an F-Type, with an instructor in the passenger seat. Raymond stayed behind. He wasn't well enough for such excitement. I felt uncertain at first. Too many buttons, too sensitive pedals, too powerful an engine. But gradually, under the instructor's guidance, I started to get used to it. And when we pulled onto the highway, and I truly felt what this car was capable of, a wave of pure delight washed over me. "You're doing great," praised the instructor. "For someone who hasn't driven in a long time, you have excellent reflexes." Back in the showroom, I knew I couldn't give up this car. It seemed to embody my new life. Bright, fast-paced, full of possibilities. 2 days later, I became the owner of a new Jaguar F-Type, a dark blue beauty that now stood proudly in my parking space at River Heights. The company paid for it in full, as part of my severance package, and even arranged intensive driving lessons with a professional instructor. It was like the world had opened up to me. With my own apartment, a prestigious job, and a luxury car, I felt 10 years younger. I was bursting with energy. I took long walks along the waterfront, joined the pool at our complex, even started yoga classes for seniors. My physical transformation continued too. I updated my wardrobe, choosing elegant but modern clothes that flattered my figure instead of hiding it. A stylist at a salon gave me a new haircut and taught me natural makeup that refreshed my face without making it look vulgar. "You've literally blossomed," Raymond remarked when I showed up at the office in a new lavender suit, my hair perfectly styled. "You look like you've aged 15 years in reverse." "I feel like I have," I admitted. It's like I've started my life over again. And it was true. For the first time in many years, I felt like I wasn't just a function, a mother, a grandmother, a housekeeper, but a complete person with my own desires, ambitions, and the right to happiness. I talked regularly with Sybil and Frank, who were delighted by the changes in me. Sybil even flew in for a weekend to see my new apartment and, of course, my car. "My goodness, Mom, you look amazing," she exclaimed, hugging me at the airport. "And that's your car? Seriously?" We had a wonderful weekend, walking around the city, dining at nice restaurants, talking about everything under the sun. Sybil admitted she'd never seen me so happy and energetic. "You know, I always worried about you," she said as we sat on my balcony, sipping wine and watching the sunset over the river. "I was afraid you'd end up living alone in your old house, counting every penny. And then when you moved in with Harlan, I felt something was wrong, but I didn't know how bad it was." "I didn't realize how bad it was either," I admitted. "Not until I had a chance to see it from the outside." After she left, Frank came to visit. He took 3 days off work. When he saw my new life, he just shook his head respectfully. "Wow, Mom, you showed us all up." We had a wonderful time. Unlike Sybil, Frank was more practical, helping me with technical issues. He set up my computer, installed a security system, even hung shelves in the closet. "You know," he said as we said goodbye at the airport, "I always knew you were special, but you've exceeded all expectations." His words touched me deeply. For the first time, I felt that my children, at least 2 of them, saw me not just as a mother, but as a person with my own achievements and strengths. Work was also going well. Raymond and I completed the restructuring and began negotiations with potential buyers. Raymond's condition was deteriorating. He now came to the office only once a week, spending most of his time working from home or in the hospital, but his mind remained sharp. We continued to function as a well-oiled team. In early August, Raymond Pierce called me to his home. His condition had worsened significantly. He was no longer able to come to the office, spending most of his time in bed under a nurse's supervision, but his mind remained clear and his interest in the company's affairs unabated. "Gwendolyn," he said as I settled into a chair by his bed, a folder of documents on my lap. "Any news on potential buyers?" "Yes, and good news," I smiled. "Bradford Industries has raised its offer to $120 million. Their lawyers are already drafting the contract." "Excellent," Raymond smiled weakly. "I hope I live to see the signing." "Don't say that," I covered his hand with mine. "You'll see your company pass into good hands." We discussed business, then the conversation unexpectedly turned personal. "How's your son?" Raymond asked. "You didn't tell me if you've had any contact with him since that incident." "None," I shook my head. "He called a few times, left messages, but I didn't call back." "That's the right thing to do," Raymond nodded. "But you know, my daughter told me something interesting. Her husband works at the insurance company where your Harlan used to work. It turns out he was fired for a serious mistake in the reports that cost the company a major client." "I see." I felt a slight pang of regret, but nothing more. "That's not all," Raymond continued. "Rumor has it he's in serious financial trouble. The bank is threatening to foreclose on his house for late payments. He and his wife are trying to sell it quickly, but the market isn't very favorable right now." I was silent, not knowing what to say. On one hand, I felt sorry for Harlan. No matter how badly he'd treated me, he was still my son. On the other, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was a kind of higher justice at play. "I'm not telling you this to gloat," Raymond said gently, noticing my confusion. "I just thought you should know. Maybe it's time to get your things out of his house before it's too late." "Maybe you're right," I replied thoughtfully. "There are photos, letters, a few mementos I didn't have time to take that day." "Then don't put it off," Raymond advised. "And don't let him hurt you again. You deserve better." That evening, I called Sybil. She confirmed Raymond's words and added details. "Daisy called me last week, Mom. They're really desperate. Harlan can't find a new job. He was fired in a scandal and didn't get any references. They're selling their house, their car, even their furniture. Daisy asked if I could lend them some money." "And what did you say?" "That we're in a difficult situation ourselves right now," Sybil sighed. "And it's true. Dominic's waiting for a promotion, but it's on hold due to restructuring, and the children, you know how much education costs these days. I know, dear, I said gently. You did the right thing. Mom, Sybil's voice grew quieter. Don't you think you should help them? I know Harlan did a terrible thing, but he's still your son. I thought about it. Did I really want to help Harlan after everything he'd done to me? After the humiliation, being thrown out, the hot tea? I don't know, I replied. Honestly, I need to think about it. But first, I want to get my things. I'll call him tomorrow and arrange a meeting. After talking to Sybil, I sat on my balcony for a long time, looking at the lights of San Antonio, thinking about the vicissitudes of fate. For months ago, I was a powerless pensioner, a free servant in my son's house. Now I was a successful financial director with a luxurious apartment and a sports car. And Harlan, who had treated me so cruelly, was in a desperate situation. Was there some higher justice at work? Or just coincidence? What should I do? Help him, or let him reap the rewards of his actions? In the morning, I called Harlan. He answered almost immediately, a strange excitement in his voice. Mom, is that you? Yes, Harlan, I tried to speak calmly. I'd like to pick up my things that are still at your place. When can I come over? Of course, he said with unusual helpfulness. You can come anytime. I'll be home all day. Then I'll come tomorrow around 11, I said. Okay, Mom. Anne, I wanted to say I'm really glad you called. We missed you. I almost laughed at the sudden change in tone. Not long ago, he'd called me a beggar and kicked me out. Now he's suddenly missed me. Had Sybil told him about my new job? Or was he so desperate he'd humble himself to anyone for financial help? See you tomorrow, Harlan, I said, and hung up without responding to his sentimental outburst. The next morning, I dressed carefully, choosing an elegant ivory sheath dress, low-heeled shoes, and minimalist gold jewelry. I did my makeup and styled my hair. Looking in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. The well-groomed, confident woman was so different from the downtrodden old woman I had been just a few months ago. At exactly 10:30, I got into my Jaguar and headed for Harlan's house. The weather was beautiful. Bright August sunshine, a light breeze perfect for a drive with the top down. The car glided smoothly, attracting admiring glances. Who would have thought that at 68, I'd be driving a sports convertible and enjoying every minute of it? When I turned onto Harlan Street, my heart involuntarily beat faster. I hadn't been here since the day my son kicked me out. The neighborhood looked the same, neat houses, trimmed lawns, bikes on driveways. But now I looked at it all from the outside, as a stranger. Harlan's house stood out, and not in a good way. The lawn was unkempt. Oil stains on the driveway. A squat for sale sign with a real estate agent's number stood prominently. I parked the Jaguar right in front, turned off the engine, and paused, gathering my thoughts. What did I feel? Strangely, almost nothing. No anger, no resentment, no desire for revenge or gloating. Just a calm confidence that this stage of my life was over, and I had come to put an end to it. I got out of the car, straightened my shoulders, and headed for the front door. Before I could ring, the door swung open, and Harlan appeared. He had lost weight, looked haggard. His eyes were sunken, dark circles beneath them, and more gray hair. Mom, he exclaimed with exaggerated joy. I'm so glad to see you. He took a step forward as if to hug me, but I took a small step back. He stopped, awkwardly lowering his arms. Hello, Harlan, I said calmly. I've come for my things. Yes, of course, he nodded, still smiling, though it looked forced. Come in, please. Daisy has made tea and cookies. I walked in, noting how much had changed. Some furniture was gone. Pictures were off the walls. What remained looked neglected and dreary. A strange smell hung in the air, stale food, dust, general desolation. Daisy waited in the living room, wearing what she apparently considered her best dress, a little outdated, not flattering on her plump figure. Elliot and Nora sat nearby on the sofa, unusually quiet, clearly embarrassed. Gwendolyn. Daisy stepped toward me with a fake smile. How wonderful to see you. You look stunning. Her voice sounded genuinely surprised, her gaze assessing my outfit, my hair, my jewelry. Everything so different from my former appearance. Thank you, Daisy, I nodded. You too. You look well. The last sentence was a blatant lie. Daisy looked exhausted and unkempt, with messy makeup and dull hair. Please sit down, Harlan said, pointing to a chair. Would you like some tea or coffee? No, thank you, I remained standing. I don't have much time. I just wanted to pick up my things. Yes, of course. Harlan rubbed his hands nervously. I packed everything into boxes. They're in the garage. But maybe you'd like to stay for a while? We haven't seen each other in so long. And whose fault is that? I asked, not raising my voice, but firmly. Harlan blushed and lowered his eyes. Mom, we're all very sorry about what happened. I wasn't myself. I said some terrible things. It's unforgivable, I know, but maybe we could start over. I looked closely at my son. His eyes showed despair, but not remorse. He looked like a drowning man clutching at straws, not someone who sincerely regretted his actions. Harlan, I said calmly, let's not pretend. You found out about my new job from Sybil or Frank and decided I could help you with money. That's why you suddenly remembered your family ties. What? No. He feigned indignation. How could you think that? We all missed you. Right, kids? Elliot and Nora nodded in unison, but their faces remained impassive. It was obvious they'd been forced into the charade. Mom, I heard you're working at your old company now, Harlan continued, clearly changing tactics. That's great. I always knew you were a great professional. And is that your car outside? Impressive. Yes, that's my Jaguar. I allowed myself a slight smile. A company car. Part of my compensation package as CFO. Chief Financial Officer. Daisy couldn't hide her surprise. But you said you were a volunteer at the library. I lied, I replied simply. I didn't want you to know about my real job and salary. Salary. Harlan leaned forward. And how much do you make, if you don't mind me asking? $75,000 a month, I said calmly, without boasting, simply stating a fact. The room fell silent. Harlan froze, mouth open. Daisy turned pale. The children showed their first sign of interest, looking at each other in surprise. $75,000 a month, Harlan repeated slowly, as if he couldn't believe his ears. But that's more than you made in a year at the insurance company, I finished for him. Yes, life is full of irony, isn't it? Mom, that's amazing. Harlan seemed to have finally found his voice. I'm so happy for you. And you know, it's for the best that it turned out this way. You've gained independence, a new life, thanks to you kicking me out of the house and pouring hot tea on me. I raised an eyebrow. Well, that's not what I meant, he said, embarrassed. It's just, everything's for the best, right? Maybe I agreed. But don't pretend you wanted to help me. You wanted to get rid of the burden, as you called me. Mom, I was wrong. Harlan took a step toward me, his voice pleading. I admit it. I acted terribly, but we all make mistakes, right? Didn't you teach us to forgive? Yes, I nodded. And I forgive you, Harlan. But that doesn't mean I'll forget, or that I should put myself at risk of being treated that way again. But we've changed. Daisy interjected. The last few months have been difficult for us. We've reevaluated a lot of things. Yeah, especially when you found out I make $75,000 a month. I couldn't resist the sarcasm. Gwendolyn, we're truly sorry. Daisy moved closer, her voice honeyed. And we'd like you to be part of our family again. You mean you'd like my money to be part of your family? I corrected her. Let's be honest, at least now, Mom. Don't be like that. Harlan took another step toward me. Of course, things are tough for us financially right now, but it's not about the money. It's just that I've realized how much you mean to us. I sighed. His insincerity was almost palpable. Where are my things, Harlan? I asked, deciding not to continue this pointless conversation. In the garage, he said, visibly deflated. I'll walk you out. We walked through the kitchen to the garage where there were indeed 3 cardboard boxes with Mom written on the side. That's everything, Harlan said. I tried not to forget anything. Your photo albums, books, personal items. I opened the top box and glanced through the contents. Everything looked fine. My old photos, letters, a few mementos. Thanks, I nodded. Can you help me carry them to the car? Harlan picked up 2 boxes, and I took the third, the lightest one. We left the house and headed for my Jaguar. Daisy and the children followed us, clearly not wanting to miss the spectacle. Wow, Elliot breathed, speaking for the first time since I'd arrived. Is that really your car, Grandma? Yes, Elliot, it's my car, I said, opening the trunk, which was large enough to hold all 3 boxes. Cool, the boy muttered with reluctant admiration. Harlan carefully placed the boxes in the trunk and turned to me. Mom, please, let's talk. I know I did a terrible thing, but I'm your son, your flesh and blood. Can you give me a second chance? I looked at him closely. Standing before me was a grown man, my own child, whom I had given birth to, raised, and sacrificed for over many years. But in his eyes, I saw only calculation and despair, not love or remorse. You know, Harlan, I said calmly, when you kicked me out of the house, you called me a beggar and said I was nobody, that I was living in your house out of the goodness of your heart. You didn't see me as a person, just a function, a convenient servant who cooked, cleaned, and looked after the children. I was wrong, he said, lowering his eyes. I didn't mean it. No, you did. I shook my head. And you know what's the saddest part? I almost believed you. I almost believed that I was nobody, that I didn't deserve respect or a decent life. But now I know that's not true. I closed the trunk and walked around the car to get behind the wheel. Mom, please. Harlan followed me. We're on the verge of bankruptcy. The bank is taking the house. I don't have a job. The kids could end up on the street. I'm sorry you're in this situation, I said sincerely. But you're a grown man, Harlan. You'll manage. But you could help. His voice took on that familiar, demanding tone. You make a fortune, and your own son could end up homeless. Like you once said to me, I opened the car door. Let's see how you manage without us. Now it's your turn to find out the answer to that question. You can't do this. Harlan's voice became hysterical. I'm your son. Yes, you're my son, I said, getting behind the wheel. And that's exactly why I'm not just going to give you money. It won't help you become a better person. Maybe when you face the consequences of your actions, you'll finally learn to appreciate other people and treat them with respect. I started the engine, and the powerful roar of the motor made Harlan take a step back. Goodbye, Harlan, I said. I wish you and your family all the best. Mom, he made one last desperate attempt. You can't just leave. We're family. Family isn't just blood, I replied. It's mutual respect, care, and support. When you're ready for a real family relationship, you know where to find me. With that, I pulled away, leaving Harlan, Daisy, and the children standing on the driveway with confused and angry faces. Ending. As I pulled onto the highway, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not malice, not vengeful satisfaction, but relief, as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in many, many years, I was completely free. Free from guilt, from false responsibility, from toxic relationships. That evening, I sat on the balcony of my apartment, sipping a glass of fine wine and looking out at the lights of San Antonio. The boxes from Harlan's house stood unpacked in the corner of my living room. I'd sort through them tomorrow with a clear head. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Sybil. Mom, how did it go? Her voice sounded worried. Fine, I replied calmly. I got my things and left. And Harlan? Did he ask for help? Yes, I smiled. As soon as he found out about my salary, he remembered I was his beloved mother. And what did you decide? Sybil asked cautiously. I refused, I replied simply. Not because I want to get back at him, but because it won't help him become a better person. He has to deal with the consequences of his actions himself. There was silence. Then Sybil said quietly, You know, Mom, I think you're right. Harlan has always been complicated. Maybe this is exactly what he needs. Maybe, I agreed. Time will tell. After talking to my daughter, I returned to the balcony. The night was warm, a light breeze carrying the scent of blossoming trees from the waterfront. Somewhere, music played, and I could hear the laughter of people living their lives, with their joys and sorrows. I thought about how strange life was. 6 months ago, I was a dependent, downtrodden old woman my own son considered a burden. Now, I was a successful, Financially independent woman with my own beautiful home, a luxury car, and most importantly, an unbreakable sense of self-worth. Money certainly changed my life for the better. It gave me freedom, comfort, and opportunities one never had before. But true wealth didn't come with a bank account. It came with the realization of my own worth, the ability to defend my boundaries, and the courage to live the way I believe is right. Call to action. This journey, it changed everything. I'm curious, what would you have done in my place? Would you have helped Harlan? Or stood your ground? Let me know in the comments below. I really want to hear your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe to support this channel. Your support truly means the world to me.